My golden brother's fiancée falsely accused me and convinced my parents to take away my house and give it to her as moral compensation. So I cut off everyone completely. I'm 26 years old and live in Tampa. My story starts with what might seem like a typical success narrative, but it becomes something much darker about family manipulation and financial abuse. I worked my way up from an assistant coordinator position, making just $32,000 annually, to my current role as a senior manager, where I'm finally pulling in decent money each year. Here's the thing about me. I'm obsessively good with money. While my coworkers were out buying expensive pickup trucks and eating restaurant meals for every single meal, I was living in a cramped 400 square foot apartment that barely had room for a bed and a small kitchen table. I drove a 2016 Honda Civic that had already racked up 190,000 miles when I bought it used. Every single penny I could get my hands on went straight into my savings account. My family background is complicated, and that's honestly putting it mildly. My dad works construction jobs when he can get them, dealing with the physical demands and inconsistent work that comes with that industry. My mom works as a substitute teacher, but only when the school district actually needs her, which means her income is completely unpredictable from month to month. Between the two of them, they somehow managed to raise 4 kids on maybe $58,000 combined income in a good year. And good years weren't exactly common in our household. Money was always tight when I was growing up, and I mean seriously tight. We wore hand-me-down clothes that came from Goodwill shopping trips, where my mom would spend hours searching through racks to find anything that fit and wasn't completely worn out. Everything in our house was generic brand, from the cereal that tasted like cardboard to the toilet paper that felt like sandpaper. When other families talked about vacation plans, our idea of a family vacation meant camping in state parks with a tent that had developed several leaks over the years, so we'd wake up soaked whenever it rained during the night. I learned early in life that if you want something in this world, you work for it. There's no fairy godmother coming to fix your problems, and waiting around for someone else to solve things for you is a guaranteed path to disappointment. I started mowing lawns when I was 12 years old, going door to door in our neighborhood with a beat-up push mower, asking if anyone needed their grass cut for $5 or $10. By 14, I had secured a paper route that required me to wake up at 5 a.m. every single day, including weekends, to deliver newspapers on my bike before school started. Throughout high school, I worked at a local grocery store, spending evenings and weekends bagging groceries and cleaning up spills while my classmates were at parties or hanging out at the mall. My brother Dylan, on the other hand, learned the completely opposite lesson from our family's financial struggles. He figured out that if you want something, you charm your way into getting someone else to pay for it, preferably while making them feel guilty if they show any hesitation about opening their wallet. This approach worked surprisingly well for him throughout our childhood and adolescence. Dylan has always been what you'd call the charming one in our family. He's good-looking in that effortless way that some guys just naturally have. The kind of person who rolls out of bed looking like he could be in a magazine advertisement. He's also a smooth talker who could probably convince a fish to buy water if he put his mind to it. Most importantly for his lifestyle choices, Dylan has never met a responsibility he couldn't charm his way out of when things got difficult or inconvenient. The contrast between Dylan and me became crystal clear during our high school years. While I was working 25 hours a week at Best Buy, somehow managing to maintain a 3.8 GPA and still find time to play on the tennis team, Dylan was supposedly too busy with football practice to get a job. This was interesting logic, considering he seemed to have plenty of time to party every single weekend, often staying out until 2 or 3 in the morning and sleeping until noon the next day. The financial inequality in how our parents treated us was stark and honestly pretty infuriating when I look back on it now. I paid for my own car insurance every month, which was a significant chunk of my part-time income. I bought my own gas, which meant carefully calculating how many miles I could afford to drive each week. I purchased all my own clothes, which usually meant shopping at discount stores and wearing the same few outfits over and over again until they fell apart. Meanwhile, Dylan's car situation was completely different. Dad somehow managed to scrape together enough money to buy him a used Ford Mustang. Nothing fancy, but definitely cooler and more expensive than anything I could afford on my grocery store wages. Dylan's car insurance was paid for by Dad every single month, without any complaints or lectures about responsibility. When Dylan needed gas money, it just appeared, usually accompanied by some comment about how hard football practice was and how he deserved to focus on his athletics. The college situation really highlighted the family's different expectations for each of us. Dylan's college tuition was covered by our parents, who took out loans that they're still paying off 6 years later. These weren't small loans either. We're talking about tens of thousands of dollars in debt that continues to impact their monthly budget to this day. Dylan's degree, which our parents sacrificed so much to finance, ended up being completely worthless because he dropped out during his junior year to pursue music. His reasoning was that his band was going to make it big, and college was just holding him back from achieving his artistic destiny. Spoiler alert. Dylan's band never made it past playing dive bars in St. Petersburg for tip money that barely covered their gas to get to the next gig. The band broke up after about 18 months when the other members got tired of Dylan's lack of commitment to actually practicing or learning new songs. While Dylan was dropping out to chase his musical dreams, I was taking a completely different approach to my education. I graduated summa cum laude with a degree in project management, and I did it with zero debt because I worked part-time throughout my entire college career. This meant living off ramen noodles for 4 years straight, sometimes eating the same basic meal for weeks at a time because it was all I could afford. I lived in the cheapest dorm rooms available, never went out to bars or restaurants, and spent my weekends working instead of socializing. The day I graduated, I already had a job lined up and immediately started saving for a house. Not just an apartment or a small condo, but a real house with a yard where I could have some privacy and space, and a garage where I could work on projects. This wasn't some impossible dream either. I had a specific plan with concrete financial goals and realistic timelines. In 2022, after 3 solid years of saving every possible dollar and living like a monk, I finally had enough money for a substantial down payment on a house. Those 3 years involved making sacrifices that most people my age couldn't even imagine. I continued living in tiny apartments, driving my aging Honda Civic, and maintaining the same frugal lifestyle that had gotten me through college. Every bonus, every raise, every tax refund went straight into my house fund without exception. I found a 3-bedroom house in Clearwater with a $285,000 purchase price. I put down $57,000 as a down payment, which completely cleaned out my entire savings account and left me with a monthly mortgage payment of $250. It was a significant financial commitment, but I had done the math carefully and knew I could handle the payments while still maintaining my emergency fund and continuing to save for the future. I furnished the house slowly over the course of 2 years, buying everything piece by piece from Facebook Marketplace and estate sales. This meant spending weekends driving around to look at used furniture, negotiating prices with people who were downsizing or moving, and gradually building up a home that felt comfortable and functional without breaking my budget. It wasn't the fastest way to furnish a place, but it was the most financially responsible approach I could take. This is where my best friend Rick comes into the story, and he becomes a crucial part of everything that happens later. Rick is a 28-year-old electrician who looks like he bench presses pickup trucks for fun in his spare time. He's built like a refrigerator and has absolutely zero filter when it comes to calling out nonsense, which makes him both an excellent friend and a brutally honest reality check whenever I need one. Rick helped me wire the entire house during the renovation process, working evenings and weekends after his regular job to make sure everything was up to code and properly installed. We spent countless hours together working on electrical projects, installing ceiling fans, upgrading outlets, and making sure the house had all the modern conveniences I wanted. During this time, Rick gradually became my unofficial life advisor and the person I turned to when I needed someone to tell me the truth about complicated situations. Rick has this theory that every family has one person who ends up carrying everyone else financially, and that person always gets taken advantage of until they finally snap and fight back. He calls it pack mule syndrome. One person bears all the weight while everyone else rides along for free, and the arrangement continues until the pack mule either breaks down completely or finally bucks everyone off their back. "Bro," Rick told me one Saturday afternoon while we were installing ceiling fans in the living room, sweat dripping onto my old hardwood floors. "You're the pack mule in your family. Your whole family's been riding you since you got your first paycheck at 16 years old. They're going to keep riding until you either break down completely or buck them off your back." I laughed it off at the time, making jokes about how family helps family, and that's just how things work when you care about people. I thought Rick was being overly dramatic and maybe a little cynical about family relationships. I should have listened to Rick more carefully. The man's got street smarts that could power a small city, and his predictions about people's behavior are usually spot on. The house became my sanctuary in every sense of the word. I had my gaming setup established in the 3rd bedroom, complete with a custom-built PC that I'd saved for 2 years to afford. I created a home gym in the garage using equipment I'd bought piece by piece from Craigslist. A bench press, free weights, a pull-up bar, and a few other essentials that let me work out without paying for an expensive gym membership. The backyard was perfect for grilling, and I built a fire pit myself using YouTube tutorials and materials from Home Depot. My daily routine in the house was absolutely perfect, and exactly what I had worked so hard to achieve. I would wake up at 6 a.m. every morning and start my day with coffee on the back porch, watching the sunrise and enjoying the peaceful quiet before the rest of the world woke up. I worked from my home office until 5 p.m., which gave me a comfortable work-life balance and eliminated any commuting stress. After work, I'd hit the gym in my garage for an hour or so, then make dinner while watching Netflix or spend the evening gaming until around midnight. It was simple, peaceful, and completely mine. I made a deliberate decision never to post about the house on social media. I didn't share photos of my new place on Instagram or Facebook, didn't check in at my address, and generally kept my living situation as private as possible. I also never invited family members over for holidays or casual visits. My family knew I'd bought something because it's hard to hide a major purchase like that completely, but they thought it was a small condo based on the deliberately vague things I would tell them when they asked about my living situation. I let them maintain this misconception on purpose, and I had very good reasons for doing so. Experience had taught me over the years that the more my family knew about my finances and my financial success, the more creative they would get about finding emergencies that somehow required my immediate financial assistance. There was always a car repair that couldn't wait, a medical bill that insurance didn't cover, or some other crisis that needed to be solved with my money right away. But secrets and families have a way of coming out eventually, especially when you start getting too comfortable and let your guard down. No matter how careful you are, someone always finds out more than you intended them to know. In February 2023, Dylan called me with what sounded like a familiar sob story, though I didn't realize at the time just how calculated and manipulative this particular request would turn out to be. He explained that he and his girlfriend Vanessa needed a place to crash because their lease had ended unexpectedly. Their new apartment wouldn't be ready for a few weeks, and they were basically homeless until they could move into their permanent place. It was just temporary, he promised repeatedly, and they would be incredibly grateful for any help I could provide. I had never actually met Vanessa in person at this point, but I'd seen plenty of her through Dylan's constant Instagram stories, which he shared obsessively whenever they did anything together. From what I could see on social media, she was basically every basic Instagram influencer stereotype rolled into one person. She had blonde hair extensions that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget, fake nails that were so long and elaborate they could probably double as weapons in a pinch, and a constant stream of selfies with captions like "living my best life" and "blessed and grateful beyond measure." Most of her photos showed her posing with Starbucks Frappuccinos that cost $6 each, or standing in front of luxury cars that definitely weren't hers, trying to create the impression that she was living some kind of glamorous lifestyle. Dylan had been dating her for about 8 months at this point, and according to him, she was different from other girls and really motivated because she was trying to start a lifestyle blog about wellness and manifestation. According to her social media presence, however, her main motivation appeared to be getting other people to pay for her lifestyle, while she figured out how to monetize her supposed spiritual journey and personal brand. But Dylan was my brother, and family helps family, so I agreed to let them stay with some very clear conditions. It would be a 2-week temporary stay, maximum. They would help with groceries and utilities while they were there. It seemed like a simple arrangement between adults who understood and respected boundaries. They showed up the very next day with a full-size U-Haul truck. Not a small pickup truck or a regular moving van, but a massive moving truck like you'd rent when moving an entire apartment's worth of furniture across the country. I'm watching through my front window as they unload box after box after box, with Vanessa directing Dylan around like a 5-star general commanding troops in a military operation. "That box goes in the living room," she called out, pointing with one of her elaborately manicured nails. "This one goes in our bathroom. Be careful with my mirrors. Those are expensive and irreplaceable. That's my essential oils collection, so handle it gently." Our bathroom. Day 1, hour 1, and she's already claiming territory in my house like she's planting a flag on conquered land. Rick happened to be at my house that day fixing an electrical outlet in the kitchen, and he started laughing when he saw the size of the truck they'd brought. "Bro, you see what's happening here?" he said, gesturing toward the window where we could see them unloading what looked like enough stuff for a permanent move. That's not a temporary stay. That's a hostile takeover. Nobody packs that much stuff for a few weeks unless they're planning to stay a lot longer than they're telling you. Vanessa walked into my house wearing a crop top that probably cost more than my entire monthly grocery budget, fake Gucci slides, and sunglasses indoors like she was hiding from paparazzi or trying to maintain some kind of celebrity mystique. The first thing out of her mouth wasn't, "Thank you for letting us stay here," or "We really appreciate your help." Instead, she said, "Oh, wow, this place is actually pretty nice. We could definitely make this work long-term if we wanted to." Make what work long-term? They were supposed to be there for 2 weeks maximum, just until their new apartment was ready. But she was already talking about long-term arrangements like this with some kind of trial run for permanent living. She immediately started rearranging my living room without asking permission, or even suggesting that maybe she should check with me first. She moved my gaming chair, which I had positioned perfectly for optimal TV viewing, to make room for her massive pink velvet ottoman that looked like it belonged in a French bordello rather than my carefully decorated living space. She took down my carefully selected movie posters, classic films that I'd chosen specifically because they represented my interests and personality, and replaced them with live laugh love canvas art and motivational quotes about manifesting abundance. These weren't small changes either. She was completely redesigning my living space according to her personal aesthetic preferences. In my bathroom, she set up an elaborate skincare routine that took up most of the counter space. There were serums, masks, cleansers, toners, and various electronic devices that made weird humming and buzzing noises at all hours of the day and night. The bathroom looked like a spa supply store had exploded in there. "Don't worry about all the changes," she told me, with this patronizing smile that made my skin crawl. "I'm basically an interior designer, so I know what I'm doing. I actually studied it for a semester at community college before I found my true calling in wellness and lifestyle content creation. I didn't ask for interior design help. I had spent 2 years getting my house exactly how I wanted it, carefully choosing every piece of furniture and every decoration to create a space that felt comfortable and reflected my personality. But apparently, my aesthetic choices weren't up to Vanessa's standards. By day 3, she was ordering DoorDash twice daily, expensive meals from trendy restaurants, and having me sign for the deliveries since she claimed to be too busy creating content to answer the door herself. By day 5, she had given my home address to her nail salon so they could come to my house for mobile manicures in my living room while I was trying to work from my home office. By day 7, she was hosting Instagram live streams where she talked to her 3,000 followers about manifesting abundance in our new space. Our new space, not my house where she was a temporary guest, but our new space like she had some kind of ownership stake in the property I had worked years to afford. Rick started calling her Princess Parasitic after witnessing her behavior for just a few days. He began making bets about how long it would take her to completely take over my entire house. "Give it 2 months, Max," he predicted, with the confidence of someone who had seen this type of manipulation before. "She'll have redecorated your bedroom and be charging you rent to live in your own house by summer." At the time, I thought Rick was being overly dramatic and pessimistic about the situation. Looking back now, I realize he was actually being conservative in his estimates. Then, Dylan lost his job in March, which should have been a wake-up call for them to find alternative housing arrangements immediately. He had been working at a car dealership where he was making decent money in sales, but apparently telling your sales manager to chill out and stop micromanaging me when asked to show up on time is frowned upon in professional environments. Who could have predicted that employers expect their employees to arrive when scheduled? Now they were both unemployed and living in my house, eating my food, using my utilities, running up my electric bill with Vanessa's constant content creation lighting setup, and showing absolutely no signs of actively looking for jobs or making any effort to move out and find their own place. Vanessa's response to Dylan losing his job was not concern about their financial situation or urgency about finding new employment. Instead, she saw this as a positive development. "This is actually perfect timing," she announced with the enthusiasm of someone who had just won the lottery. "The universe is clearly telling us something important. Now you can focus on your music while I build my brand without the distraction of traditional employment." Her brand consisted primarily of posting thirst traps on Instagram, trying to get free products by claiming she was an influencer with a substantial following, and making TikTok videos about elaborate morning routines that involved 20 different supplements she couldn't afford but somehow kept ordering to my address. 2 weeks turned into 6 weeks without any concrete progress toward finding their own place. 6 weeks turned into 12 weeks with increasingly creative excuses about why they hadn't moved out yet. Every time I brought up their original move-out date or asked about their apartment hunting progress, Vanessa would get teary-eyed and emotional about how stressed she was about finding the perfect place for them to start their life together. The rental market was so crazy right now, she would explain through carefully timed tears. Everything decent was so expensive, and they had such specific requirements for their living space that would support their lifestyle and creative endeavors. They just needed a little more time to find something that would really work for their long-term goals and personal growth journey. Meanwhile, they were living like they owned the place, and I was just some annoying roommate they had to tolerate. Vanessa's friends started coming over for content creation sessions, using my house as a backdrop for their Instagram photos and TikTok videos. She was ordering packages to my address daily: makeup, clothes, supplements, decorative items, like she was furnishing her permanent residence. The most infuriating part was when she painted one of my guest room walls bright pink without asking permission, or even mentioning that she was planning to do it. When I confronted her about it, she explained that the room needed more feminine energy for proper manifestation, and that the previous neutral color was blocking the flow of abundance and creativity. Rick started documenting everything with photos on his phone, creating a comprehensive record of their increasingly bold territorial claims. "Trust me," he said, while photographing the pink wall and the growing collection of Vanessa's belongings scattered throughout my house. "You're going to need evidence when this inevitably goes to court. This girl's playing the long game, and you're the target she's locked onto." I thought Rick was being overly dramatic about the legal implications, but I was starting to realize that his predictions about people's behavior were usually more accurate than I wanted to admit. As it turns out, Rick is basically a prophet when it comes to reading people's true intentions and predicting how far they'll go to get what they want. By month 8 of what was supposed to be a 2-week temporary stay, I was completely losing my mind. My peaceful sanctuary had been transformed into a complete chaos zone that smelled like essential oils and entitlement. The house that I had worked so hard to make my own had become unrecognizable, filled with pink decorations, motivational posters, and the constant hum of Vanessa's various electronic beauty devices. Vanessa had begun treating me like I was live-in building maintenance rather than the actual homeowner who was graciously allowing them to stay there. She was constantly asking me to pick up her packages while I was trying to work from my home office, demanding that I be quiet during her content creation time, which conveniently overlapped with my normal work hours when I needed to take conference calls and participate in meetings. She also insisted that I keep my gaming volume down because the sound disturbed her meditation and chakra alignment sessions, which she conducted in my living room at seemingly random times throughout the day. These sessions involved burning incense that made the whole house smell like a head shop and playing ambient music that sounded like whale sounds mixed with wind chimes. But what really started to concern me were the increasingly bold comments Vanessa was making about the house itself, as if she was already planning some kind of permanent takeover. I would overhear her talking to Dylan about the property like it was theirs to modify and improve. "You know, Dylan, this place has such good bones and potential," she would say, while gesturing around my living room, like she was a real estate agent showing a property to prospective buyers. With the right vision and strategic investment, it could be worth so much more than it is now. It's such a shame to see a space with this much potential being underutilized by someone who doesn't really understand interior design and feng shui principles. Underutilized. I lived there every single day. I worked from my home office, cooked meals in my kitchen, relaxed in my living room, and paid for every square inch of the mortgage, insurance, utilities, and maintenance. But according to Vanessa, I was somehow wasting the space because I wasn't maximizing its aesthetic and spiritual potential. The breaking point came when I decided to leave work early one Thursday afternoon and arrived home to find something that made my blood pressure spike instantly. Vanessa was giving a complete house tour to her friend Madison, who was filming everything with professional lighting equipment and multiple camera angles like they were shooting a real estate listing video or a home improvement show. "And this is the kitchen, which obviously needs a complete gut renovation," Vanessa was saying, as she gestured around my perfectly functional kitchen. "But it has really good bones underneath all this outdated design. The master bedroom is absolutely huge, so much bigger than it looks in photos. Dylan and I are already planning how we'll redecorate when we officially take over ownership of the property." She continued the tour, pointing out various improvements they were planning to make. "We're thinking of knocking out this wall to create a walk-in closet for my wardrobe collection, and maybe adding a skylight in the bathroom to bring in more natural light for my morning skincare routines. When they officially take over ownership. What did that even mean? How does someone officially take over ownership of a house that belongs to someone else, especially when that someone else is still living there and paying all the bills? I cleared my throat loudly from the doorway, making my presence known. Vanessa jumped about 3 feet in the air like she had been caught red-handed, stealing something valuable, which in a way, she basically had been. Her face went completely white for a split second before she quickly recovered with her practiced Instagram-ready smile. "Oh, hey there! You're home super early today," she said with forced cheerfulness, like being caught giving unauthorized tours of someone else's house was just a minor social awkwardness. I was just showing Madison around our place and giving her some decorating ideas for her own apartment search. Our place. Not my house where she was a temporary guest who had already overstayed her welcome by about 6 months, but our place, like she had some legitimate claim to the property. "Take over ownership?" I asked, keeping my voice carefully neutral, despite the fact that my heart was pounding with anger and disbelief. I wanted to hear exactly how she was going to explain this particular choice of words. Vanessa got this deer-in-headlights look for just a moment, like she had been caught saying something she definitely shouldn't have said. Then she quickly recovered with her practiced Instagram smile and launched into what was obviously a hastily improvised explanation. "Oh, that! I just meant when we eventually find our own place, we want something with a similar layout and design potential," she said with a laugh that sounded completely fake. "You know, for reference and inspiration when we're apartment hunting. We've really fallen in love with this style of house. It was complete nonsense and we both knew it. But I just nodded along and watched Madison pack up her professional filming equipment, making mental notes about everything I had just witnessed. That night, I made a decision that would prove to be absolutely crucial for everything that happened later. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but the walls in my house are thinner than I realized, and Vanessa's voice carries when she gets excited about her schemes and future plans. I could hear them talking in their bedroom, and what I heard made me grab my phone and start recording immediately. "I'm telling you, Dylan, this situation is absolutely perfect for us," Vanessa was saying, with the kind of enthusiasm usually reserved for winning the lottery. "Why would we even bother getting our own place when we could just stay here permanently? He's basically letting us live for free anyway, and he obviously doesn't know what to do with all this space." Dylan's voice was quieter, but I could still make out his response. "I don't know, babe. It's his house. He worked really hard to buy it and get everything set up the way he wants it. For now, it's his house technically," Vanessa replied, with a tone that suggested she had already given this considerable thought. "But think about it logically, Dylan. He's single, no kids, works all the time, barely uses half the space available. We're the ones actually living here, making it feel like a real home instead of just some bachelor pad." Then she said something that made my blood run cold. "Plus, with a baby on the way, everything changes." Wait, hold up. What did she just say? A baby on the way? Since when was there a baby involved in this situation? This was the first I was hearing about any pregnancy, and it felt like a crucial piece of information that should have been shared with the homeowner. "Your parents already love me way more than they've ever liked him," Vanessa continued, clearly outlining what sounded like a comprehensive plan. "And families help families, right? Especially when there's going to be a grandchild involved. Their first grandchild, actually." She was pregnant. Vanessa was pregnant, and she was already planning to use this pregnancy as leverage to manipulate my parents into helping them somehow take over my house. The audacity was breathtaking. "You really think they'd actually help us get the house somehow?" Dylan asked, and I could hear the uncertainty in his voice, like he wasn't entirely comfortable with whatever scheme Vanessa was proposing. "Baby, your brother makes serious money and spends it on nothing but video games and computer equipment," Vanessa explained with the patience of someone teaching a child basic math. "Your parents have been worried about him being alone forever, probably dying single and childless with no legacy to continue the family name. A house this big for one antisocial person who doesn't even entertain or have guests over. That's just selfish and wasteful, especially when their son is trying to start a family and provide them with the grandchildren they've always wanted." I was recording this entire conversation on my phone with hands that were literally shaking with anger. Every word was being captured clearly, and I was already thinking about how this evidence might be useful later. Rick had been absolutely right about needing documentation of their behavior and intentions. The next morning, Vanessa announced the pregnancy with all the subtlety of a freight train crashing through a wall. She accidentally left a positive pregnancy test on the kitchen counter where I would definitely see it during my normal morning coffee routine, positioned perfectly next to the coffee maker, so there was no way I could miss it. Then she acted all surprised and embarrassed when I inevitably noticed it. Like this was some kind of genuine oversight rather than a carefully orchestrated reveal designed for maximum emotional impact. "Oh my gosh, you weren't supposed to see that yet," she exclaimed with exaggerated shock, covering her mouth with her hands like she had just committed some terrible social faux pas. "We wanted to tell the whole family together at the same time, make it really special and memorable." Dylan appeared in the kitchen moments later, grinning like he had just won the lottery instead of getting trapped by a professional manipulator who was already planning to use their unborn child as a weapon in her campaign to steal my house. "Surprise, bro! You're going to be an uncle!" Dylan announced with genuine excitement and pride. "Isn't this absolutely amazing? We're going to have a baby!" I forced myself to fake enthusiasm while internally screaming and already planning my escape route from this increasingly insane situation. I congratulated them both, asked appropriate questions about due dates and doctor appointments, and pretended to be thrilled about becoming an uncle, while my mind was racing through all the implications of this development. That weekend, they took the next step in what I now recognize was a carefully planned campaign. They invited my parents over for dinner at my house, using groceries that I had paid for without asking my permission, and essentially ambushed me with a family gathering that I knew nothing about until I came home from running errands. I walked into my own kitchen to find my parents sitting at my kitchen table, while Vanessa played the perfect hostess, serving them dinner and acting like the lady of the house. She was in full performance mode, wearing a flowy maternity dress that emphasized her barely there bump and talking constantly about how blessed and grateful they were to be starting their family in such a loving, stable home environment. My mom was eating every single word like it was gospel truth from heaven itself. "Oh, Vanessa, you're just absolutely glowing," she gushed with the kind of maternal warmth she had never shown toward any girlfriend I had brought home. "And this house is just absolutely perfect for raising children. The backyard is so spacious and the neighborhood seems so safe and family-friendly." "I know, right?" Vanessa responded with practiced vulnerability and gratitude. "Dylan and I were just saying how this feels like our forever home, you know? We could really see ourselves building a whole life here, raising our kids in this neighborhood, becoming part of the community, building a life in my house, raising kids in my house that I worked years to afford. Kids plural, suggesting this was just the beginning of their family planning in my property. Dad started talking about how expensive it is to raise children these days, how difficult it is for young couples to get started financially, how the housing market makes it nearly impossible for people Dylan's age to afford anything decent in a safe neighborhood." Vanessa nodded along sympathetically throughout this conversation, occasionally placing her hand on her stomach and looking overwhelmed by the challenges of impending parenthood. "It's just so stressful," she said, with practiced vulnerability that would have won her an Academy Award. "Houses like this are completely out of our budget range, even with both of us working full-time. Everything we can realistically afford is just not suitable for raising a baby safely. The neighborhoods are either too dangerous or the houses are too small or in terrible condition." She was laying the groundwork perfectly, and I could see the manipulation happening in real time, like watching a masterclass in emotional manipulation. My parents were falling for every single word, nodding along and making sympathetic comments about the challenges young families face in today's economy. After dinner was finished and the manipulation session had concluded, my mom pulled me aside into the hallway for what she clearly considered an important private conversation about family responsibilities and priorities. "That girl is absolutely perfect for Dylan," she told me, with the kind of conviction usually reserved for religious revelations. "She's going to make such a wonderful mother, and you can just tell how much she loves him. You're so lucky to have them here, really. This house was honestly way too big for just you anyway." I had to bite my tongue hard enough to taste blood to keep myself from pointing out that this house was exactly the size I wanted when I spent years saving to buy it. I just nodded along and made appropriate, agreeable sounds while internally planning my counterattack. After my parents finally left that evening, Rick stopped by to check on the electrical work he had been doing in my garage. I filled him in on everything that had happened: the pregnancy announcement, the family dinner ambush, and Vanessa's performance for my parents. Rick wasn't even surprised anymore by the escalating audacity of Vanessa's behavior. "Called it months ago," he said, with the weary satisfaction of someone whose predictions had been proven completely accurate. Princess Parasitic found her mark, analyzed all the family dynamics, identified all the weak points in your family's decision-making process, and now she's moving in for the kill. The question is, What are you going to do about it? I didn't have a concrete plan yet, but I was definitely starting to get some very specific ideas about how to handle this situation permanently. The baby shower happened on a Saturday in May, and it represented the absolute peak of Vanessa's manipulation campaign. Originally, the shower was supposed to be held at my parents' house, which would have been the normal and appropriate location for a family celebration. But somehow, Vanessa managed to convince them that my place would be so much more spacious and perfect for photos, and would really show how much family unity and support meant to all of us. Of course, she didn't approach me directly with this request, because that would have required her to acknowledge that I actually owned the house and had the authority to grant or deny permission for events. Instead, she had Dylan approach me with the request, framing it like they were doing me a massive favor by allowing me to host this wonderful family celebration in my own home. Vanessa thought it would be really special to have the shower at your place, Dylan explained with the enthusiasm of someone who genuinely believed this was a great idea. Since you've been so generous letting us stay here and everything. Plus, she's been working so hard to make the house look amazing for the professional photos she's having taken to document this special time in our lives. Make the house look amazing. It was my house. It already looked exactly how I wanted it to look after 2 years of carefully selecting furniture and decorations. But apparently, my aesthetic choices weren't suitable for Vanessa's professional photography session. Somehow, I ended up agreeing to host a baby shower for 30 people while being treated like hired help instead of the actual homeowner who was providing the venue, paying for utilities, and essentially subsidizing the entire event. Vanessa went into full event planner mode during the entire week leading up to the shower, ordering me around like I was her personal assistant rather than the person doing her an enormous favor. "Can you move your car to the street so there's more parking in the driveway for our guests?" she asked, though it was really more of a command than a request. "Can you put all your gaming stuff away so it doesn't ruin the aesthetic of the photos? We want everything to look perfect and cohesive. Can you make sure to stay out of the main areas during gift openings so you don't accidentally photobomb the professional photos? This is really important for the baby book we're creating. Stay out of the main areas of my own house during a party I was hosting and essentially paying for." The audacity was reaching levels that should have required some kind of scientific measurement scale. Rick showed up early Saturday morning to help set up for the baby shower. But really, he was there to watch the chaos unfold and document everything with his phone for what he was now calling the inevitable legal proceedings. He brought his girlfriend Kate along, who took one look at Vanessa directing traffic while wearing a 200-word maternity dress and immediately understood the assignment. "Oh, hell no," Kate whispered to me while watching Vanessa bark orders at Dylan about where to position the gift table. "That girl's absolutely insane. She's acting like she owns this place, and you're just some servant she hired for the day." The party officially started at 2:00 p.m. with pink and gold decorations covering every surface of my living room and dining room. There was a 3-tier cake that probably cost more than my monthly food budget, elaborate games involving guessing baby food flavors and measuring Vanessa's belly with ribbon, and enough pink balloons to float a small aircraft. Vanessa was playing the perfect pregnant princess throughout the entire event, graciously accepting gifts like she was actual royalty holding court. Every other sentence out of her mouth was about how blessed and grateful she was, how amazing it was to have such a wonderful, stable home to raise the baby in, and how excited she was to start this new chapter of her life in such a supportive environment. My mom was eating every single word, like it was the most beautiful poetry ever written. She kept talking about how excited she was to finally have a grandchild, how wonderful it was that Dylan and Vanessa had found such a stable, loving environment to start their family, and how perfect everything was working out for everyone involved. Stable environment in my house that they didn't contribute a single penny toward maintaining. Loving environment that I was providing through my mortgage payments, utility bills, and grocery purchases. But somehow, I was getting zero credit for creating this perfect situation. Then came the moment that I will never forget for the rest of my life, no matter how old I get or how many other shocking things happen to me. My mom stood up in the middle of the gift opening portion of the party and tapped her water glass to get everyone's attention, like she was about to make a toast at a wedding reception. "I have a very special announcement to make," she said, with the kind of dramatic flair usually reserved for award ceremonies or political speeches. She pulled out this fancy wooden box with an elaborate ribbon that looked like it contained something extremely important and valuable. "Dylan and Vanessa, this is from all of us in the family. A gift to help you start your family with complete security and stability, knowing that you'll always have a safe place to call home." Inside the box was a house deed. My house deed, except Dylan's name was printed on it instead of mine. The document looked official and legitimate, with proper legal formatting and everything. The entire room erupted in applause, like they had just witnessed the most generous and heartwarming gesture in human history. Vanessa started crying what appeared to be genuine happy tears, covering her face with her hands and thanking everyone through her sobs. Dylan looked genuinely shocked but pleased, like he couldn't believe his good fortune. My mom was beaming like she had just solved world hunger and brought peace to the Middle East. "We wanted to make absolutely sure you have security and stability for the baby," my mom announced to the room full of family members and friends. "The house is yours now, completely paid off. Consider it an early inheritance and our investment in the future of this family and the grandchildren we're so excited to meet." I examined the deed more closely while trying to keep my facial expression neutral. It had Dylan's name where mine should have been, but when I looked at the signature line, something was definitely off. I had seen my signature on legal documents hundreds of times over the years. Mortgage papers, insurance policies, employment contracts. This wasn't my signature. It was close, but not quite right. My dad leaned over and spoke quietly in my ear while everyone else was celebrating. "Don't make a scene in front of everyone," he said, in a tone that suggested this was non-negotiable. "We'll talk about this later in private, just the family. You'll be fairly compensated for your sacrifice and contribution to the family's future." That's when it hit me like a freight train carrying a load of concrete blocks. They had forged this deed. My own family had actually committed identity theft and fraud, forged my signature, and fraudulently transferred ownership of my house to Dylan without my knowledge, consent, or participation. I didn't make a scene at the baby shower. I just excused myself politely, telling everyone I needed to step outside for some fresh air and to process this wonderful surprise. Instead, I went straight to my bedroom and started making some very important phone calls that would change everything. The first call was to my lawyer, explaining the situation and asking about the legal implications of forged documents and fraudulent property transfers. The second call was to a locksmith, scheduling an emergency service appointment for first thing Monday morning. The third call was to a professional moving company, arranging for a full crew and truck to be available within 48 hours. The fourth call was to Rick, who answered on the first ring like he had been expecting this exact conversation. "It's time for Operation Pack Mule Liberation," I told him, and I could practically hear him grinning through the phone. "Game on, brother. I've been waiting for this day for months." Monday morning at 6 a.m. sharp, the locksmith arrived exactly on schedule as I had requested. By 6:30 a.m., every single lock in the house had been changed. Front door, back door, garage door, and even the deadbolts I had installed for extra security. By 7 a.m., Rick was there with his work truck and 3 of his biggest electrician buddies, all of them eager to help with what Rick had dubbed Operation Pack Mule Liberation and looking like they could handle any resistance we might encounter. Dylan and Vanessa were still fast asleep in what they had started calling their bedroom when the professional moving crew showed up at 8 a.m. with a full-size truck and enough moving boxes to pack up a small apartment's worth of belongings efficiently and safely. I banged loudly on their bedroom door with the kind of authority I should have been using all along. "Rise and shine, everyone. It's moving day, and we're on a tight schedule." Dylan opened the door looking completely confused and half asleep, his hair sticking up in every direction. "What? Moving day? What are you talking about, bro? I thought we settled all this yesterday with the house transfer. You've got exactly 2 hours to pack up all your belongings and get out of my house permanently," I announced, with the calm confidence of someone who had finally decided to take control of their own life. "Anything left behind after 10 a.m. becomes my property and will be donated to charity." Vanessa appeared behind him wearing a silk robe that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, looking like she had just been personally insulted by the universe itself. "Excuse me, but this is our house now," she said, with the indignation of someone whose carefully laid plans were being disrupted. "You literally cannot just kick us out. We have legal rights as homeowners, and I'm pregnant, which gives us additional protections under housing laws." I held up my phone showing the crystal clear recording of their conversation from months ago, where she had explicitly laid out her entire plan to manipulate my family and take over my house through emotional manipulation and fraud. "First of all, that deed you received yesterday is completely fraudulent," I explained, with the patience of someone teaching basic legal concepts to children. "My signature was forged, which makes it a Class 4 felony in the state of Florida. Second, you've been trespassing in my house for over a year without paying rent, which violates multiple housing laws. Third, I have recordings of you planning to steal my property through family manipulation. You have exactly 2 hours to pack and leave. Dylan was trying to process this information while simultaneously trying to wake up and understand how his perfect plan had just completely fallen apart. But the deed? Mom said it was all legal and official. She said you had agreed to transfer ownership as a family gift. Show me a single mortgage payment, insurance payment, property tax payment, or utility bill with your name on it, I challenged him. Show me any evidence that you've contributed even $1 toward the ownership or maintenance of this property. Vanessa's face was turning increasingly red as she realized that her months of manipulation and planning were about to result in absolutely nothing. You can't do this to us. I'm pregnant with your nephew or niece. You're literally going to throw a pregnant woman out on the street like some kind of heartless monster. I'm evicting a squatter and a wannabe identity thief who happens to be pregnant, I corrected her. The pregnancy isn't my problem, my responsibility, or my concern. You should have thought about housing stability before attempting to steal someone else's property. Rick and his crew started bringing in moving boxes and packing supplies with military efficiency. We're here to help you pack efficiently and safely, ma'am, Rick announced with professional courtesy. Purely for your convenience, and to avoid any property damage during the moving process. The next 2 hours were absolute chaos, and I have to admit that I enjoyed every single minute of watching Vanessa's carefully constructed world fall apart in real time. She was screaming about how this was completely illegal, how she was calling the police to report me for unlawful eviction, and how her father was a lawyer who was going to sue everyone involved in this criminal conspiracy against a pregnant woman. For the record, her father isn't actually a lawyer. He sells insurance policies and drives a 2019 Camry that he's still making payments on. But when people are panicking, they tend to exaggerate their connections and resources. Dylan was running around frantically trying to pack their massive amount of stuff. And I mean massive, because they had somehow accumulated enough belongings to fill a small apartment during their extended, temporary stay. He was also trying to calm Vanessa down, while simultaneously trying to figure out what had just happened to their perfect plan to steal my house. My mom showed up around 9:30 a.m., absolutely furious, and ready to lecture me about family obligations and destroying Dylan's future happiness. "What do you think you're doing?" she demanded as she marched up my driveway like a woman on a mission. "That's their house now. We gave it to them legally and officially. You can't just change your mind because you're jealous of their happiness." I calmly showed her the police report I had filed for identity theft and fraud, along with copies of the documentation proving that the deed was forged and completely invalid. "Mom, they forged my signature on legal documents," I explained, with the patience of someone dealing with a child who doesn't understand consequences. "This is a serious felony under Florida state law. Do you want to be considered an accessory to fraud? Because that's what happens when you knowingly participate in document forgery and property theft." Her face went completely white when she realized that they had actually committed real crimes with potential jail time, not just some family disagreement that could be resolved with guilt trips and emotional manipulation. Meanwhile, Vanessa was having a complete emotional meltdown that would have won her multiple Academy Awards if it had been an acting performance. She was crying and screaming about the unfairness of it all, how this was destroying her dreams of building a family, and how I was personally responsible for traumatizing an innocent unborn child. At one point, she dramatically threw herself onto my couch and wailed like she was auditioning for a Greek tragedy. "This is so unfair! We were building a life here. We had plans and dreams. You're destroying everything we worked for." Rick couldn't contain himself anymore and started laughing. "Lady, you were building a life with someone else's money in someone else's house while contributing absolutely nothing except drama and entitlement," he pointed out with brutal honesty. "That's not building a life, that's being a parasite. There's a significant difference between the two concepts." By 10 a.m. exactly, they were gone. Dylan was loading the last of their belongings into the moving truck while Vanessa was still screaming threats from the driveway about how this wasn't over, how she was going to sue me for everything I was worth, and how karma was going to make me pay for destroying a young family's future. She was already posting Instagram stories about being illegally evicted by toxic family members and asking her followers for donations to help them find emergency housing. The victim narrative was in full swing before they had even driven away from my property. I watched them drive away from my front window while Rick handed me a cold beer and grinned like we had just won the Super Bowl. "Phase 1 complete," he said with satisfaction. "What's Phase 2 of Operation Pack Mule Liberation?" Phase 2 was where things were going to get really interesting, and I was already looking forward to it. That evening, I sat down with my laptop and spreadsheet software to compile every single financial account, subscription, and automatic payment that I had been covering for my family members over the years. I wanted to create a comprehensive record of exactly how much money I had been providing to people who had just tried to steal my house. The list ended up being significantly longer and more expensive than I had expected, even though I knew I had been helping people financially. Over the past several years, I had gradually become the unofficial family bank without really noticing how extensive and expensive this arrangement had become for me personally. It had started small and seemingly reasonable, the way these things always do when families begin taking advantage of the financially successful member. First, I covered Dad's truck payment when he was injured on a construction job and couldn't work for a few weeks. Then I helped with Mom's credit card payment when she overspent on Christmas presents and couldn't make the minimum payment. Then I took over my sister's car insurance because she was between jobs and struggling to make ends meet. Before I knew it, without really tracking the cumulative impact, I was paying for Dad's truck payment every single month at $425s. I was covering Mom's car insurance at $185 monthly because she claimed her rates had gone up due to an accident that wasn't her fault. I was paying for my sister Megan's phone plan at $87 per month because she needed reliable communication for job searching. I was funding my parents' streaming services, which combined cost $69 monthly for Netflix, Hulu, and Amazon Prime because they deserve some entertainment in their retirement years. I was also paying for Uncle Pete's storage unit at $135 monthly because he was going through a difficult divorce and needed somewhere to keep his belongings temporarily. There was the family phone plan upgrade, which cost an additional $47 monthly for unlimited data that everyone claimed they absolutely needed for work and emergency communication. Then there were the various family emergencies that averaged about $295 monthly, including car repairs that couldn't wait, medical bills that insurance didn't cover completely, utility payments when someone's power was about to be shut off, and other crisis situations that required immediate financial intervention. My total monthly family subsidy was approximately $1,243 every single month. Over the past 3 years, that added up to $44,748 in regular monthly payments that I had been making automatically without really calculating the cumulative impact on my own financial goals and savings. That wasn't even counting the one-time emergency payments that had become increasingly frequent over the years. There was the house down payment help I gave my parents totaling $15,500 when they were facing foreclosure and needed to refinance. There was the emergency car repair fund for my sister when her transmission died completely, totaling $8,200 for a rebuilt transmission and related repairs. There were countless smaller loans that were never paid back, $500 here for Christmas gifts, $300 there for car registration fees, $200 for emergency dental work. My total family financial bailout since I started making decent money was $68,448. That was nearly $70,000 that I had given to family members who had just tried to steal my house through fraud and manipulation. Rick's jaw literally dropped when I showed him these numbers on my laptop screen. Bro, what the actual hell? You could have bought a luxury sports car with that money. You could have taken a vacation to Europe every single year for the past 5 years. You could have invested that money and probably doubled it by now. You could have literally done anything else besides supporting a bunch of fully grown adults who should be supporting themselves. He was absolutely right, and seeing the numbers laid out in black and white made me realize just how badly I had been taken advantage of. But I had been raised with the belief that family helps family, that you take care of your own people when they're struggling. That success means lifting others up with you rather than keeping everything for yourself. I thought I was being a good son and brother, demonstrating family values and showing love through financial support. Now I realized I had just been functioning as a very well-compensated ATM machine for people who felt entitled to my money simply because we shared DNA. It was time to permanently close the family bank and cut off all financial support immediately and permanently. I spent the next hour methodically canceling every single automatic payment, subscription, and financial arrangement that involved my money going to family members. Dad's truck payment got discontinued immediately. He could figure out how to make his own car payments like every other adult in America. Mom's car insurance policy got canceled. She could shop for her own coverage and pay her own premiums. My sister's phone plan got disconnected. She could get her own phone service and pay her own monthly bill. My parents' streaming services all got terminated. If they wanted entertainment, they could pay for it themselves or go to the library. Uncle Pete's storage unit payment got stopped. His divorce and storage needs were not my financial responsibility. The family phone plan got downgraded to basic service for just my line. Everyone else could get their own individual plans and manage their own bills. Every single automatic payment to any family member got discontinued permanently. No more emergency fund, no more crisis intervention, no more family bailout services. Then I drafted a group email that I planned to send first thing Tuesday morning to all the family members who had been receiving my financial support. I wanted them to discover the full scope of what they were losing all at once for maximum impact, rather than letting them figure it out gradually over several weeks. But first, I made some strategic phone calls to limit their damage control options and prevent them from trying to manipulate other people into replacing my financial support immediately. I called Dad's boss at the construction company where he worked. "Hey, this is awkward, but I thought you should know that someone might be calling you claiming to be my father, asking about emergency loan assistance or advanced pay options. My family's been having some serious financial issues and boundary problems lately. I just wanted to give you a heads up in case anyone contacts you about lending money or advancing paychecks." I had the same conversation with Mom's principal at the elementary school where she worked as a substitute teacher, explaining that my family might try to ask for financial assistance or emergency loans from her workplace due to some personal financial difficulties they were experiencing. I also called my sister's current boyfriend's parents, whom I had met at a family barbecue, to let them know that my sister might approach them for financial help in the coming weeks due to some family financial restructuring that was happening. Rick was absolutely dying laughing as he listened to me make these calls. "You're scorching the earth behind you, cutting off all their backup plans before they even know they need backup plans. I love it. This is strategic warfare at its finest." Tuesday morning, I sent the group email with all the family members copied on it. The subject line read Financial Independence Day because I wanted to frame this as a positive development for everyone involved. The body of the email explained that after this weekend's events involving the attempted theft of my house through fraudulent documents, I had decided it was time for everyone in the family to achieve true financial independence and self-sufficiency. Effective immediately, all automatic payments from my accounts to theirs had been permanently canceled. All shared services had been discontinued. All emergency financial assistance had ended permanently and would not be reinstated under any circumstances. All outstanding loans were now due in full, with accumulated interest calculated at market rates. I attached helpful financial planning resources to the email, including personal budgeting worksheets, local job search websites with current openings, and information about government assistance programs they might qualify for if they were experiencing genuine financial hardship. I also included a detailed spreadsheet showing exactly how much money I had provided to each family member over the past 3 years, so they could see the full scope of the financial support they had been receiving and taking for granted. My phone started ringing within 15 minutes of sending that email, but I had already decided that I wasn't going to answer a single call. This wasn't a negotiation or a discussion. It was an announcement of a decision that had already been made and implemented. Week 1 brought panicked voicemails and increasingly desperate text messages from various family members who were suddenly realizing that their financial safety net had disappeared overnight. Week 2 brought the real consequences as the automatic payments they had been depending on failed to arrive and their financial situations began to deteriorate rapidly. Dad's truck got repossessed from the construction site where he was working, which was embarrassing for him professionally and resulted in him having to find alternative transportation to job sites. Mom's car insurance lapsed, and she got pulled over during a routine traffic stop, resulting in a ticket for driving without insurance and a mandatory court date to resolve the violation. My sister's phone got shut off mid-Instagram story while she was posting about her daily routine, which she considered a personal tragedy of epic proportions since her social media presence was such an important part of her identity and social life. I knew all these details because my cousin Beth kept sending me updates via text message. Beth had always been the family gossip coordinator, the person who collected and distributed information about what everyone was doing and how they were handling various life situations. But she was also smart enough never to have asked me for money, and she thought what my family had done with the forged deed was completely unforgivable. "Your mom had to take a part-time job at Walmart," Beth texted with a secretly taken photo attached. "She's working self-checkout looking absolutely miserable and defeated." My mom, who used to brag to her friends about her successful son who was doing so well financially, was now scanning barcodes for $13 an hour and dealing with frustrated customers who couldn't figure out how to use the self-checkout machines. "Your dad's riding the city bus to work now," Beth reported with another candid photo. "Saw him at the bus stop this morning looking completely defeated and exhausted. Dylan and Vanessa are living in her parents' basement and paying $850 rent plus utilities. Vanessa's crying on Instagram daily and started a GoFundMe for apartment deposits and moving expenses. The GoFundMe raised exactly 50 tours after 2 weeks of being posted, which I found absolutely hilarious. Week 3 brought waves of increasingly desperate phone calls from different family members who were trying various emotional manipulation tactics to get me to restore their financial support. My sister called from work since her personal phone had been shut off for non-payment, claiming that she thought there had been a huge misunderstanding about the email and that surely we could work this out like reasonable adults. Mom left a voicemail about how we needed to discuss this situation like a mature family instead of letting pride and stubbornness destroy relationships that had taken decades to build. Dad tried a different approach, leaving a message saying that my mother was crying herself to sleep every night because of the stress and worry about our family falling apart. I didn't call anyone back or respond to any of the messages. I was completely done being their emergency contact for self-created financial problems and relationship drama. Week 4 brought the full family intervention attempt that I had been expecting since sending the email. I was prepared for this because I had installed a Ring doorbell and security cameras around my property, so I could see exactly who was approaching my house and decide whether I wanted to interact with them. The entire family was assembled on my front porch like they were attending a funeral or staging some kind of dramatic confrontation. Vanessa was there wearing an oversized sweater that was clearly chosen to emphasize her pregnancy bump, and she was practicing her most pathetic and vulnerable facial expression. "What do you want?" I asked through the intercom system, without opening the door or stepping outside to face them directly. "We want to talk as a family," Mom said, with the tone of someone who believed they held the moral high ground in this situation. "We need to work this out together and find a solution that works for everyone involved." "The same family that committed identity theft and fraud against me?" I responded calmly. "The same family that forged my signature and tried to steal my house through illegal document manipulation?" Dylan spoke up after Vanessa elbowed him sharply in the ribs, clearly prompting him to take his turn in the emotional manipulation campaign. "Bro, we're literally living in Vanessa's parents' basement right now, paying $850 rent plus utilities every month. We can't afford it long-term with the baby coming, and her parents are making it clear that this arrangement isn't sustainable. Here's exactly how we can work this out," I said through the intercom with the confidence of someone who had already thought through all the possible negotiations. First, Dylan and Vanessa need to publicly apologize on social media for attempting to steal my house and admit that they forged my signature on legal documents. Second, everyone needs to get actual jobs and pay your own bills like functioning adults instead of expecting other people to subsidize your lifestyle choices. Third, you need to pay me back every single penny I've loaned or gifted to this family over the years. That's $68,448 plus interest calculated at current market rates. "That's completely ridiculous and unreasonable," Vanessa shouted from the porch. "We don't have that kind of money, and you know we don't have any way to get it. You're being completely unrealistic about what's possible." "Then I guess you better start earning it through actual employment," I replied. "Maybe get jobs, work multiple shifts, sell some of your expensive clothes and accessories, or figure out some other legal way to generate income like every other adult in America." They stood there for another 10 minutes with Vanessa getting increasingly dramatic in her attempts to generate sympathy. She actually sat down on my porch steps and started crying about how the stress of this situation was dangerous for the baby's health and development, and how I would be personally responsible if something bad happened to her or the unborn child due to the emotional trauma I was causing. I didn't acknowledge the manipulation attempt or engage with the guilt trip tactics she was trying to use. Week 6 brought what I recognized as the real begging campaign, where the emotional manipulation attempts became more desperate and creative. Vanessa started texting me from her mom's phone since her own phone service had been disconnected, sending me a photo of herself in what appeared to be a hospital bed. "I had to go to the emergency room because of severe stress and anxiety," the message said. "The doctor said that emotional trauma can cause serious complications during pregnancy. Don't you care about your own niece or nephew?" I screenshot the message and sent it to Rick with the caption, "Level 10 manipulation attempt currently in progress." He responded immediately, "Don't fall for it. Princess Parasitic is pulling out all the stops and using every trick in the manipulation playbook." She tried again a few hours later with a different approach. "What kind of uncle abandons his own family when they need help the most? What are you going to tell your niece or nephew when they ask why you weren't there for them?" Then she got truly desperate and started throwing Dylan under the bus to try to save herself. I'll leave Dylan completely and disappear from all your lives forever. I'll move to another state and you'll never hear from me again. Just please help him get back on his feet financially so he can have a chance at a normal life. Now she was willing to abandon Dylan entirely if it meant getting access to my money. The loyalty and love she had been claiming was all conditional on financial support. Week 8 brought a development that I genuinely wasn't expecting. Despite all the drama and manipulation I had witnessed over the past several months, Dylan showed up at my house alone, looking absolutely terrible. He had lost at least 20 pounds, was completely unshaven with several days' worth of stubble, and was wearing clothes that clearly needed washing. He looked like someone who had been living rough for weeks. "Can I please come in?" he asked quietly. "Just to talk for 5 minutes. I promise I'm not here to ask for money or try to manipulate you into anything." I decided to let him in, but I was recording everything on my phone for legal protection and future reference. Dylan sat down on my couch and stared at his hands for a full minute without saying anything, like he was trying to find the right words for something extremely difficult. "She left me," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "What?" I asked, even though I had heard him clearly. I wanted him to explain exactly what had happened. "Vanessa left me last week. She moved back in with her ex-boyfriend from college, some guy named Marcus who apparently has a good job and a nice apartment. She says the baby probably isn't mine anyway, and she needs to be with someone who can actually provide for her and give her the lifestyle she deserves." This was a plot twist that I genuinely hadn't seen coming. Despite all of Rick's warnings about Vanessa's true character and motivations, she was cheating on me the whole time we were together, Dylan continued, still staring at his hands like he couldn't bear to make eye contact. Getting money from him, getting money from me, probably getting money from other guys too. I'm just the one who was stupid enough to try getting her an entire house through fraud and family manipulation. He looked up at me with tears in his eyes, and for the first time in years, I saw genuine remorse and self-awareness instead of entitlement and excuses. "You were completely right about her from the very beginning," he admitted. "She was using me, using all of us, manipulating everyone for financial gain. The second things got difficult and the money stopped flowing, she just disappeared and moved on to her next target." He was actually crying now, not the fake tears I had seen from Vanessa, but genuine emotional pain and regret. "I'm really sorry, man. I genuinely fucked up in every possible way. I know I took advantage of your generosity and let her manipulate me into doing something terrible and illegal to you. I participated in identity theft against my own brother because I was thinking with the wrong part of my anatomy and believing everything she told me about family and security. And that's when I realized that I had completely won this entire situation. Not just the house situation, not just the financial manipulation, but everything. The person who had tried to steal my property was now sitting in my living room, broken and apologetic, while the mastermind behind the whole scheme had abandoned him and moved on to her next victim. I sat down across from him and looked him directly in the eyes. "Dylan, you want to earn back even a tiny bit of my respect and possibly rebuild some kind of relationship between us?" "Yes, absolutely. I'll do whatever it takes," he said eagerly, like someone who was genuinely desperate for a second chance. "Get any job. I don't care if it's fast food, retail, construction, whatever. Work 6 months straight without asking anyone in this family for financial help or assistance of any kind. Prove that you can actually take care of yourself like an adult human being instead of a dependent child. Then maybe we can talk about slowly rebuilding some kind of relationship between us. But it will take years to earn back my trust, and the first sign of entitlement or manipulation means we're done forever." He nodded eagerly, like someone who finally understood the gravity of what he had done and was genuinely committed to making changes. "Yes, absolutely. I understand completely. I'll do whatever it takes to prove that I can be responsible and independent. And if I ever see Vanessa again, if she ever contacts me, if she ever comes near my property, if I even hear that she's mentioned my name, we're done forever," I added. "No second chances, no explanations, no negotiations." "Understood. Completely understood," he said. "She's completely out of my life, and I never want to see her again either." As he was getting ready to leave, I slipped him a $20 bill. "Get some food, get a shower at the gym, and start job hunting first thing tomorrow morning. Don't waste this opportunity." As Dylan was walking toward the door, he turned back and said something that actually surprised me. "For what it's worth, this house looks really good. Better than it ever did when we were here messing it up and taking advantage of your hospitality." After he left, I sat in my quiet, peaceful, completely mine house and smiled for the first time in months. My sanctuary was back to being exactly what I had worked so hard to create. Rick texted me later that evening. How'd the broken brother visit go? I replied with just 2 words. I won. Told you, bro, he responded. Pack mules always win in the end when they finally decide to fight back.